Don't you hate it when you go to do a job and you've only got a short window of opportunity and the tools you need to do the job need work? So you've got to do a job before a job. Hey guys, my name's Chris. Welcome back to the Ultimate Recycler. I've just got to go and weigh all the batteries in the van before I go do a run to the scrapyard. I've got to load up some more at the shop and I don't want to overload the van. I grabbed some bathroom scales that I thought would be ideal for the job. They're a digital one, put a battery in, nothing happens. I have to fix the scales before I can weigh the batteries. Come along, we'll see if we can fix them. Like most things in my shed, I bought these home from the shop thinking they'd be handy one day. I probably got them in a deal somewhere and I've never checked them. I just assumed they would work. There was no battery in them. And I put a good 9-volt battery. I did check it, it's a good one. Nothing happens, no numbers light up, nothing at all. So there's obviously some sort of power issue. There's no corrosion in the battery compartment. So let's take them apart and see if we can work out how to fix them. The last thing I want to do is throw them out. Let's bring them back to life. Now we've got to work out how to get them apart. The base is spring loaded, which allows it to move and obviously operate the weight sensor. There's some feet. These feet here seem to be switches. And I think when the scales are resting on the floor, when you first step on them, it activates them. But I made sure these were switching and we still had no life at the front. There's a little panel here I can remove, and I noticed the mechanism or the main body of it seems to just clip into a plastic housing. So we'll see if we can flex that out and take the plastic housing off, which I think will include the front panel. So that should go a long way to getting us inside. Let's try a larger screwdriver. I don't really want to break the clips. Okay, that's got it past the clip, and this one looks like it's going to go too. Beautiful, that wasn't so difficult. All right, what do we got? We have a little digital display. Nice big numbers actually, I like that. We have a couple of little trimmers, variable resistors on the circuit board. I guess that's for adjustment, but we have no power at all. So I'm guessing there's either corrosion or there's a broken wire or something. There's a little switch here that just goes from kilograms to pounds. But there's actually no on and off switch. I suspect these are probably the on and off switch and there might be something wrong with the contacts. That would be my guess at this stage. Now, how do we get it apart? Looks like the springs might have to release. Aha, they will. Oh geez, I hope we can get them back on, because they let go quite dramatically. Anyway, at least we can get in. Alright. Now, what do we got here? Oh, the wiring loom's a bit untidy. We've probably got to bend these metal clips to allow it to, the wiring loom to release. So they are switches. Oh geez, this is going to be a challenge to get back together. Alright, the tabs bend very easily, so at least that will allow us to open up a bit more. Alright. It's not very neatly constructed in my view. Now these springs, I've got spider webs in here as well. So the springs just hook under these little hooks. So I guess we're better to put them back in the part we took them out of, and then we might be able to reach through from the other side and just hook them on, hopefully. Yeah, that's going to be very awkward. We'll put them aside now so we don't lose them. Okay, I've put the battery back in. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that we do have power at the terminals. It should be 9 volts or close to. It's just over, so it's a good battery. And let's follow these wires back to the circuit board and make sure we have 9 volts at the board. We do. So, okay. I'd be very surprised if there was any failure on the board. It's all it really is a big display on the other side. There's a little microchip in under this resin type blob, which would do all the microprocessing work. It looks like there's some really tiny MLCCs and various other parts. There's no corrosion on the board, so I'd be very surprised if there's any problems with that. It's more likely to be probably one of those sensor switches. The scales themselves have two sensor bars with a sensor in the middle, one on each side. They should be fine, because if they were faulty we would still get some sort of figures on the display, I would imagine. So I think I'll check out, maybe I'll just follow the wires from those switches and short them out across, put a link across with a little test lead, and then see if our display has any life. Now the blue and the white wire come from one switch, and there's another red and black here that come from the other switch, and the blue and the black join on the one terminal and the red and the white join on the one, so the switches are in parallel, which means only one of them has to connect to actually make the thing operate. But I'll try and put a lead on here without shorting it out to the frame and onto the other one. And do we now have any life in our display? Whoops, there goes the sensor bar. No, we don't. No life at all. I'll put the meter on diode check, and we'll just make sure they are connecting. It appears to be. Certainly the ends of the lead are. Whether it's contacting on the terminal on the circuit board, I'm not sure. We'll forget about that lead for the moment. We can check the switches themselves. We get these probes on the solder pads, and we'll operate the switches. They're not working. That should be connecting when I press the body of the scales down. So it's definitely a problem. I'd say our leads probably weren't touching properly. Okay, I'm a little perplexed because I'm sure the lead is joining those two contacts together like the switches should, and I still have nothing on the display, and yet I have my 9 and a bit volts here, so I'm not sure why it's not working now. I might take the board off. There's a couple of Phillips head screws. We'll just take the board off here, and I might take it into the other room and just check the solder joints. Maybe there's an issue with the solder there. It does look a little scungy around that one. Maybe there is a bit of corrosion. I'll take the board off, and we also have a soldered wire here for an earth. Maybe this panel has to earth to this one to work. I'll check that first, I think. Let's run an earth over to this one somewhere, because it would earth. Oh, maybe it wouldn't. I was thinking it would earth through the springs, but given that this is painted, it might not be very good earth, so I don't think that would be. If it's meant to be earthed, they would have a link earthing the two. I think we'll forget about that plan. I'll go ahead with my plan A, and we'll take this board off and just have a better look in the better light in the other room with my magnifier and see if I can see any faults on the board. We have. I thought the display was directly on the back of this board, but there's another board. I have to take, or at least there's another half of it. The display is separate. And there are a few components on the other side. More dismantling required. Okay, this is such a mess of tangly wires. It would have been so much easier if they unplugged, but I guess it was made to a price. Now, we've already lost our earth wire. It's fallen off because I've twisted the board back and forth a few times. We still don't have any life at all, so I'm going to just unsolder the wires in from the switches, and then I can test them properly from the switches as well. And it'll get them off the board, so I'll be able to maneuver the board around a bit easier. Oh, might help if I turn my soldering iron on. So on the other side of the board, there are a couple of chips, a few capacitors, a couple of electrolytics, and 2 transistors and a diode. And on the other side, we have 2 adjustable pots. There are other terminals for things that aren't used, or contacts at least. There's a little plug here that doesn't have any wires going to it that says calibrate, or CAL. And there's one on this side that says reset, but there's no wiring going to them. So this board obviously suits some scales that does have a calibrate button and a reset button. But yeah, I don't think that they're our issue. Our issue is somehow we've got no power to the LED. Whether it's no power to the entire circuitry, although we have 9 volts here. Anyway, let's take these switches off, or at least the wires to the switches, without melting the wires. So blue and black go together, and red and white go together. Okay, so at least now we can see if these switches operate. Blue and white was to one switch. I'll put the meter on diode check so you can hear it. Okay, blue and white go to one switch. Operate the switch. We have nothing. And let's check our diode check. Yep. And the red and the black go to the switch on the other side. Nothing at all. So neither switch is working, but because they're in parallel, it doesn't matter if both are working. As long as one was working, that would operate or allow the circuit to operate. So I might just solder a little link across here, and that way we can totally forget about those switches for now and find out why we don't have any activity. Okay, this is just a bit of fine wire which I've tinned the end, and we can short across these contacts for the feet switches. Okay, did I see lights on the back of that? Well, look at that. It appears to be working, or at least there's activity. So maybe everything else on the circuit is okay. Let's snip this off for now and have a look. Oh, we don't have anything. I thought we did have a red light. Let's take that bit of wire off for the moment again. Now, we did have life for a minute. What's going on? Let's try a lead across there now that we've melted the solder. Perhaps we just had a layer of corrosion across the top of it. There, look, we've got lights again. So, that's interesting. And then it goes off. Okay. So I guess if it sits inactive, if it has any inactivity for a certain length of time, the timer just turns the dial off. So if we take this lead off and put it back on, it springs back to life. Okay, it's probably confused because the sensors aren't in their proper thingos. We also don't have an earth wire on here, so we better put the ground back on. But that tells me that this circuitry should be okay. We've just got to get either one of these or both of these switches working from the feet of the scales, and that will then activate it. Okay, it's got an error, but I think it's confused, as I said, because we don't have the sensors hooked up properly and there's no earth. So let's fix these switches on the feet pads, because they're clearly what's at fault. Okay, I've zoomed up a bit. Let's take these feet off and see if we can get these switches to work. Alright, looks like they push on. Hopefully we don't break them. That's got it. So there's a little switch inside the foot, and you can hear it click, but it's not making a connection. Now we're going to have to get in there somehow. It actually looks like it's cracked. Yeah, it's been broken, but it shouldn't affect the switch as long as it holds together. Okay, let's cut that out. Oops. And the switch is falling apart. It looks like just corrosion, yeah, which is probably to be expected, especially if they were bathroom scales. There would have been some moisture. Now, I'm not sure if we're close enough for you to see that. The contact in the middle has definitely got some verdigris, green corrosion, and the outside contact doesn't look too bad. I don't think that green there is corrosion. I think it's actually some sort of lacquer over the top, but certainly the center point where it's supposed to touch is corroded. We'll try and clean that up a bit. The other one no doubt will be the same, so I'll get back to you shortly when I clean those up. So I've cleaned both these switches up and reassembled them, and I've got the meter on this one now, and you should be able to hear the diode check buzz. So that's working fine. All I did was grab an old toothbrush and my DeOxIT spray and cleaned up all the metal bits as well as I could. And one of the switches actually had a little bit of corrosion in the wire. I had to resolder it on. I had to shorten it, but because our wiring's such a mess, I didn't want to make it too much shorter. But they seem to work okay now. So now we can reassemble them back in here, try and sort out all this wiring, and I think we've got the job fixed. That looks a bit neater than it did when I first opened it up. So the wiring's pegged down. We were a little short on this one because I did have to shorten it. But I think that will go together quite nicely. I've got these sensor bars in the right position. So really it's just a matter of folding that case over. It'll clip together. No, it doesn't. It just goes together with the springs. So we do have to try and get the springs through that hole from the other side and to hook onto here somehow. So I'll fold it back together, we'll take it out to the other bench and we'll try and assemble the springs, and hopefully they go in okay. And then we can maybe stand on it and see how much we weigh. Okay, it seems I needn't have been so concerned. These, if you pinch them with long-nosed pliers, it's actually not so hard to put them in on an angle and get the hook under the tab on the other part of the scales. And the first one went in okay. This one's a little bit of a challenge. You need to go in a bit of an angle to get it to hook around the tab. There we go. That one's in. So that's two done. We'll do the other two, and then we just need to click the plastic housing on and we're all finished. There we go. I think that's all right. And if we push down on the switches, she comes to life. All right, ready for a final test? Give them a press. They come to life. Hop on them, and it probably says, "Get off, you're too heavy." We're up to 81.6 kilos. Must have been that roast pork I had the other day. Anyway, they're all fixed. The display looks great. It's actually much brighter with the cover over them. So they will be excellent scales for checking the weight of my batteries and for other scrap metal uses. Equally, I could sell them through the shop now that they're operational, but I think we'll use them as a set of handy scrap scales. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Another repair video done and dusted. Another repair job out of the queue. Well, this one wasn't even in the queue. I just needed this to go and do a job. But as you can see, she's working well. I better load the van. We've got a scrap run coming up very soon. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.